Morning, Richard. How are you?
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
I'm doing well. So today we're going to talk about network data servers, which is one of the
Morning, Richard. How are you?
5-part series. A 5-part series being today's network data servers, power grids, agriculture and water systems, transportation and medical, and automated construction. And all these parts are managed by K.A.I.L.E. So, Richard, you remind everybody that's part of our audience what K.A.I.L.E stands for?
K.A.I.L.E is our fictitious AI for our circular city, and it stands for Kinetic Artificial Intelligent Learning Environment. And it's supposed to be our campus for our fictitious campus for our game platform for learning. So,
and as part of I would say, one of our most important pieces here to this whole thing is K.A.I.L.E needs a computer to run, right? So we have the network data servers, and give us a little backstory of why the network data servers even exist with K.A.I.L.E. Yesterday we were talking a little bit about BBN and Otto creating K.A.I.L.E and how that part functions inside of our storyline. But give us a little backstory on that. Just kick us off.
oh, the whole idea of the circular city is the center dome is K.A.I.L.E, the AI, and she takes in information from the populace, which is the people that want to be part of the city, takes that information, all their personality, psychometric tests, interests, whatever they're interested in, puts that in the system, and that circular city developed it for the populace. And I think I did that quote about the AI should be allow the freedom of action, so the AI is not controlling the populace. The populace, it's a back and forth thing. It's like we talked about yesterday, the chicken before the egg. Who decides that? So whatever information that the populace puts in the AI puts out. And that's how in our storyline, that's how the city is developed, circular city is developed. It's based on the needs and wants and the abilities of the populace that puts the information in. And that's the whole idea of our idea of K.A.I.L.E in that. Yeah.
And I know we're going to come back to this a little bit more in our discussion. The quote that you provided was the AI maximizes the freedom of action.
Yeah.
So, and that quote we'll come back to and have a little more farther discussion. But thanks for, kind of giving us an idea where, the chicken and egg conundrum we have at the moment. So the network servers, to give a little backstory for those that aren't total nerds, geeks, currently, and that's what we're going to talk about right now for a little bit, is, how do computers and network servers and networks help us in everyday life currently? And how does that get applied to a circular city in our utopian kind of model? And examples of things that are currently existing right now that we leverage, we don't even know that they're there half the time, but help guide us through traffic or medical scenarios or all kinds of different things. So we're going to talk a lot about that for a few minutes, and then kind of dip back into the circular city and how those pieces sort of are applied. So in our discussions that we've had about this piece, networks in a general sense, are machines. They're connected. Those machines can store the data for your cloud computing. They store the information for, the information at your schools. They store information for your photos, everything that you use in this modern age, from cell phones, smartphones to your regular computers, even driving your car now is starting to utilize networks and data servers, excuse me, on a regular basis. Small history, we used to have, mainframe machines with lots of tapes and things running that stored information, and it didn't do it as efficiently as our current modern day machines. When we need more information or we need more storage, we just add it. And without getting into great detail how, sand servers work or sandboxes work or some of those other types of network things, essentially you're literally putting another machine in a rack inside of a storage room, and it just adds itself. And when you need more, you keep adding machines. Now it's a lot more complicated than that. But to keep this conversation simple, that's, the simplest explanation. K.A.I.L.E, I would assume probably needs a lot of data storage. She needs a lot of processing power. She needs to be able to solve problems, that come along. And just like IBM's Watson, which everyone's familiar with, the Weather Channel uses, or some of these supercomputer programs that help take and calculate an input, like you were just mentioning, Richard. How do we solve this specific problem? How do we solve problem X? And the supercomputer goes through and works its mathematical information and uses algorithms and other pieces to come out with some form of outcome. Now, some of them can be correct, some of them can't be. We could pick on one of our favorite topics, weather. Weather is a very important thing to us. And when we have hurricanes, we have weather mapping, and there's all these different models from different supercomputers of what that storm might do. And that's sort of an example of how we currently in this day and age use networks, data servers, supercomputers to help do calculations and find information. Some of the things that we'll talk about in some of our future podcasts, I'll pick on our agriculture for a minute, now use network and data servers to manage drones to help them do things. They need the information stored so they can calculate how to grow plants more effectively, and how to solve problems in that world. So, in our model that we're talking about, K.A.I.L.E may use those types of information to, proceed forward. What kind of things do you have impacted your life, Richard? Now, with, network data service. I know both of us have been around a while on this lovely planet. So, we've seen a lot of changes, since we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things can you even speak to, that you find really super amazing that this specific topic has changed for you?
Yeah, because being a Gen Xer, we got to go from analog to digital, and we got to see it. I think I appreciate it more now, and don't take little things for granted, like when Alexa can't answer your question, specifically the way you're asking, you have to ask 3 times still.
Mm-hmm.
And they haven't improved that, but how different from asking Alexa than picking up your phone and keying in buttons. That's even impressive. Is that
Mm-hmm.
the fact that you have Google and and you can look stuff up, and then we take that for granted, and we're like, Alexa doesn't understand me, or so I think that's important to realize the technology we have, and how we can find appreciate what we have now, but also how to advance it and appreciate the journey in between, not just look at what we have now that's crap, and now we need to improve it and better. We need that in between time, and that's what we're trying to do with this, with our learning platform, is to appreciate the journey between technologies. So.
I think that's a really interesting thought. It's funny because I have a story. I always have a story. The other day, one of my children was asking me, they already know where my favorite place to go is, from vacations, Maine. And they asked how long it took us to get to Maine. And I said, okay, well, it took my mom and dad 3 days. And like, why? And I explained that they take the back roads and you always take the interstate, so forth and so on. And the conversation, in the story, to speed this up a little bit, was, well, what did you do for fun? I go, well, we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have smartphones. We had little model cars and you looked out the window. And he goes, why? You must have been bored. And I go, I didn't notice. It's just funny because, my youngest, he's grown up, and so is the same child that was asking, have grown up with a flat screen type technologies like cell phone or smartphones and tablets and things like that. They use them in school. They're part of their books prop platform. It's amazing that in such a short amount of time, 20 years, that this thing has completely changed, even a little more than 20 years, 25 years. It's completely changed from how we do everything. And the magic, and this coming from myself, who has their own network and data servers to manage all the things that we do for our clients, right? The magic is everyone sees the front side. They don't understand the back side. What really happens when you click a button on your iPad? How does that app really function? Where does it get its stuff? And to your point, we get frustrated not understanding that things just don't magically appear. I remember the day and age back when we used to use Citrix Metaframe. I mean, this is really old. You had like little tiny apps, not the apps we have today. And you could push like Microsoft, Word and Excel to, someone in an office. And this was like future, like stuff for people, because it was like, now I had control as administrator to say what you could see or what you couldn't see as far as programs. And the crazy thing was it required a whole stack of servers, to manage this. Now I see people getting frustrated with their app. Why does it not work? Why does it not work? And I remember back in that Citrix Metaframe time period, the gentleman that I was working for, he said, wouldn't it be amazing if we had the internet everywhere? Now we can all chuckle, because we do have the internet almost everywhere. Thanks to, the entire program that Elon Musk has put up there, internet everywhere, even in places we never had it in other countries, is very possible now. So network and data servers become a very critical piece, because that's where we keep stuff. That's where we process things. That's where your app gets its data. It's where every part of your life that you currently know as a modern human being in a first world country, has all of its stuff, and everyone takes it for granted. That's the amazing thing, because they don't know how it works. And so, that's sort of what we're sort of educating, is that there's an entire Walmart sized building sitting out there somewhere right now, holding this information that we're actually talking about inside this podcast, which to some people blows their mind, and our people that understand are like, wow, it still is amazing to me. And I've grown up on it. Right. So, as well as you have.
Yes. Yeah. I have a story too. This story surrounds around technology and human, and it made me realize how important each it is to each other. My background is in healthcare. I've been in the medical field for 29 years. I worked for K.A.I.L.E. I was in the military. So it's always been healthcare, and I've been in every level. I've been a medic, a CNA, EMT, all the way to the technology part in 2000. So I kind of was in the EMR side, electronic medical charting. We went from paper charting to digital charting. And all this time I'm realizing that, and I was a unit secretary, unit coordinator at the time. And I realized that I'm doing all this technology it's going to replace my job. I'm doing all this, and the story, there's a guy named Jim that worked for K.A.I.L.E. He was one of the trainers for the system called Beacon. And we were in our third phase, and I had an attitude problem, because I thought, well, I'm doing all this work and it's going to replace these computers and machines are going to replace us, and I won't have a job. And I had a bad attitude at the time, and I knew there's going to be changes, but I didn't know. And he kind of saved my life to realize how you still need the human touch. He kind of like had you know, he had a secretary separate from all the other groups, and I was wondering why. And he kind of I thought he was kind of like hyping us up, you know, unit secretaries, unit coordinators, you guys are my favorite people. You guys are the most important people around. I'm like, you know, we're just grunts. We're not that important. And he goes, no, he says that, and he saw my attitude about it. And I said, he said, you are important, because when we make this transfer from analog to digital, do you think the doctors are going to take time to learn the system? And do you think, he said, you still need humans to teach, you still need humans. He said, your job's going to change a lot. He said, do you think that, you know, he said that, do you think that the nurses and stuff are going to order stuff from central supply and all the equipment? He said, you still have to do that physically, you know, so I said, oh, okay. That kind of changed my whole attitude, and I had a better understanding. And that's why I wouldn't be at this point in my life right now, as far as loving technology and, you know, and being so it's important that even if you think of AI and machine learning and technology, it will replace some jobs, but it will create so many other new jobs and make our life significantly better that, you know, I'm very, yeah. And like I said, especially like I said, the generation that's coming up, you know, they're going to be, you know, I think they're in good hands because they got the technology and they're way more advanced than our generation. So yeah, I'm very.
Oh yeah, I think, and I think that's a great segue for this quote that we were talking about at the very beginning here. AI or K.A.I.L.E maximizes the freedom of action. So let's break that down for a minute. So this is, I would say, a realistic mindset. I'm not going to say it's a utopian mindset. You know, most people might think it's a utopian mindset because our, you know, cinema and stories, and we create some great you know, science fiction. And you know, we all know I love science fiction. And a lot of times we look at the computer and the machines taking over. You know, we're going to create something and it's going to take over, and it's going to realize that humans are insignificant and we're going to destroy all the humans. It always seems to be a theme, right? You know, whether you go with the classic Terminator movie or you go with real classic, going back to HAL from 2001 Space Odyssey, you know, or some of these other ones, the machine was always the evil one. We created it to help ourselves, and then it turned on us. I know, Richard, you haven't watched it yet, but the folks that watched Westworld understand exactly what I'm talking about in this dystopian mindset. And in every instance of that, it was this nice, happy feeling that the machine would help be our partner, you know, and then it ended up becoming something different, right? Human beings have fear naturally that they will be replaced by something else. It could be another human, it could be, you know, a machine, it could be whatever you could possibly imagine. It's apparently it's an inherent fear for a lot of people, you know. But I loved your quote, because AI maximizes the freedom of action. So if we program artificial intelligence to constantly calculate what would help us do things better, and it outputs suggestions of how to do that better, and we go and execute those suggestions to our best of our abilities, and then it reanalyzes, the only thing it can do is improve. And although we're a network and data servers, we can talk briefly about analytics. We can take and pull in one of our previous podcasts, which is the Internet of Things. We do that now. If you, I'll go back to my little example, my previous podcast. You know, I recently read that, you know, airlines put sensors and stuff in the engines, and they calculate which pilots ride those engines harder or softer, how they fly, all the parts in the airplane specifically, you know, so that they can say, when do we do our maintenance? if 4 pilots go along that are rougher on airplanes, a little more aggressive on them, they're going to want to do those maintenance things a little sooner. Some other pilots that aren't quite as aggressive, you might do those things a little later. So that's one of those great examples where the AI is maximizing, the freedom of action. We have the freedom to fly the plane however we like, as long as we don't crash, right? And the AI's job is to make sure that we stay afloat or aloft, by making sure that those parts and those things are maintained properly on a specific schedule based upon use, which is crazy. It's not like driving your car and saying, hey, we got to change the oil every 3,000 miles. It's saying, hey, maybe I drove my car too fast and it was hotter out and my oil started to break down. Maybe it should be changed to 2,000 miles. That might be better for my car engine. Or, hey, I haven't driven my car for a while. The viscosity of the oil is fine. Maybe it's 6,000 miles. Right?
Yes.
So it's when you start looking at how that helps human beings out, you start saving resources, parts for airplanes, people's lives, how much oil you're possibly using your engine, the longevity of your car engine, things like that. And so I think that's a huge, brilliant statement, that quote. And so it's not a utopian mindset, and I don't find it to be a dystopian mindset either, because to your point, and I could list hundreds of different references where people were worried about machines taking over a job, but it actually created different jobs, or they were put in a different role, and didn't create as much fatigue as their previous role, because the machine's doing the arduous, hard physical labor, and the human is now doing things to support the machine's ability to do that based upon its recommendations.
To emphasize,
go ahead.
I want to say to emphasize what you just said. I just learned it as you were saying it, is the pilot, the AI is just judging or adjusting what the pilot does, but the AI isn't telling the pilot, oh, you have to drive, you have to fly the plane this way. So I thought that was very important. So, yeah, I thought that was.
I know that both of us like to drive. We're both a little bit of a gearhead,
Yes.
I don't know. How do you, and this is relevant to our conversation, how do you feel about self-driving cars?
Well, the bigger picture, well, like I said, talking about Circular City, and it's based on we're basing it on like the best ideas of different futurists. But most futurists think that our lives are good because of technology. Our lives are going to be changed dramatically as far as, like I said, I'm still surprised that there's Monday through Friday. We still say banker hours. We still clock in. We still, there's going to be an emphasis. Like I said, the Circular City is based on, it's almost like a college campus where you live, work, and play, but there's no distinction. There's not a clock in time, or this when it's like it's all in one, where technology is going to significantly do a lot of the things that are redundant and that you won't have to do. So you'll have more leisure time and learning time. And as you're learning, you're actually developing the AI and developing technology, making it better, because you're learning, you're teaching the AI or K.A.I.L.E in our case to learn. So it's far, so that's just like the bigger picture, is that life is going to significantly change. Lifestyle is going to change a little bit. So as far as autonomous cars, I think we talked about in previous podcasts, is that there's one part where you're driving the car for pleasure and fun and road trips and having fun, or drag racing, or you just love cars, you just love the feeling of cars. And then there's the other side of commuting. I have to get from point A to point B, go to the grocery store, go to the ball game. So if you separate those two, if it's just because I have to get downtown or go to Ybor, or if I'm in Binghamton, I have to go downtown, go to the Walmart or whatever. If I'm traveling, autonomous cars is great, or Uber is great, because I don't have to do the driving, because I don't want to drive there. It's something on my chore list that I have to do, and that. But
Mhm.
for pleasure, and that's where we come up in our circular city, is have like uh, a VR or an MR room where you're not using a lot of resources and building stuff, but you can have a VR or a hologram type room where you can do those things that you know, the vacation thing, the driving thing, the drag, if you like NASCAR racing or motorcycle racing or whatever you like, that's pleasureful. And you can have a VR room or arcade room or an area if you'd like to play tennis or hockey or whatever. You can do that in a VR room with you know, with the technology, not having to develop or produce actual things that aren't
Mhm.
sustainable. So I think we, yeah.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that a whole bunch. We could pick on Star Trek for a minute. You know, it's a fun reference for this, but you know, if you're in a bubble in space and you're going from point A to point B, and you have this mission, right? Your mission is you get up just like the military do when you're on you know, in the Navy. You're part of a group. You're all part of your own like family, if you will. You know, your brothers, your sisters that are part of the military, you're traveling, or the people in you know, in the enterprise. You know, as they're going and doing their jobs, they're also living their lives in that world. You know, there is no up or down, there is no time change like when they do have shifts, but you know, in that aspect, they have to have something to give release, competition, or something that allows them to escape from that normal everyday thing. We do it every day when we're done with work. You know, some people take their kids to, you know, soccer, some people go skiing, some people go, you know, off-roading, whatever it is, whatever their pleasure is, their fantasy or their hobby, whatever you want to call it. And you know, in the model of that circular city, or in the model of what Kaylee's providing, humans still need to have that outlet. So we'll pick on the holodeck. The most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life in some kind of, you know, brainiac way was this place that was just this room. And if you like skiing like I do, you would set it to go to the Alps and it would produce the Alps. And you could put the skis on and, you know, put the poles in your hand and you go, you know, in the Alps. You could feel the wind, the cold, the whole 9 yards. It was everything. The smell, it was 100% like being in the real place until the program ended. You realize you're sitting in a room. And coming back to topic, the amount of processing power to do that blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind, because you have to think about all the layers that are involved in producing a fictitious world in a room outside of being a Hollywood studio, you know, with all the different layers that people do. It just is completely augmented reality where you're living in the space. And I think that that's, you know, one of the reasons why maybe this is one of the 5 core fundamentals, you know, of our circular city. Besides the fact it helps K.A.I.L.E work, besides it helps run most of the system or all the other subsystems, you know, that it just is this immense amount of, you know, raw calculations, if you will.
Definitely. And I think the technology, there's a VR, and there's a Japan has a technology called hyper reality where they use hepatic and stuff that makes you feel like you'll wear a vest, and the vest will the vest has sensors on it, so when you're actually playing a game or whatever, you'll feel impact or whatever. And there are other technologies that have rooms with that can change the temperature of the room to make it cold or hot, depending on the environment you're using the VR, or in this case, the hyper reality. Once we get more advanced holograms or projection screens type technologies, it'll feel more real. It'll get more real.
So I wanted to come back and, you know, and we're almost to the end of my little bulleted list from our discussion points. And I wanted to just come back to your quote because that was the thing that I found the most interesting yesterday, because we're talking about a digital place that has this circular dome city. We have a governing a piece of AI that manages, these systems, that helps people with their learning, giving suggestions. And the word I like to use is symbiotic relationship, true symbiotic relationship, which now we're coming back to that utopian sort of mindset where we give her something, she gives us something back, and it is constantly in that aspect. What types of things, in the world that you're creating, really completely hinge on this quote, maximizing the freedom of action?
Well, like I said, one of the things we're trying to input using the different psychometric testing, that's what we need the audience and people who are experts, psychologists, and people who know the personality test, ocean test, DISC kind of test, the test they give you when you go in the military, or you're into like a tech job where they need to know your not only your technology skills, but also your personality is important, how you are. And we want to put that in the system. And the other part is we were asking the audience wellness needs, and we're humans. So like I said, your interests, what are your interests? What are your hobbies? So we want to put that in the system so that the city can provide that for, that populace. So that's what we're asking the audience is what do they think about an AI that you also input your wants, needs, and wellness kind of thing. If you're, your diet, your, what you like to eat, what your hobbies are, your interests that are separate from the learning part of the city, the technology part, the creative, non-technical parts of human life. How do you balance that out with an AI that doesn't know that you like to paint or or you like sculptures? How do you balance that out? And how do you and then one of the other series we're going to be talking in the future in podcasts and as how do you score that? How do you give grades? What's the new age way, the modern way of grading achievement and points? So that's one thing that we're trying to develop. That's why we need your help from the audience. How do you want to be, like a grading point system? So
Yeah, that's definitely one of our future podcasts. But to your point, we need people to give comments. We love to see other speakers on our podcast. Love you. Let's hit our subscribe button, hit the little bell so when we're throwing our next live video up. Please subscribe to our podcast. Please give us comments. Go to prefecturespg.com and make your comments on our podcast page. Let us know what you think. Ask us questions. Tell us, if we are a little off base with some of our comments, because as we've always said, we're not experts at this. We're just reading things and trying to figure things out just like everybody else. So we're looking for everybody's input. So please subscribe.
Yeah, because we're setting the platform, storyline, and game, but we want you to develop it. We want this to be your platform, so you tell us the rest of the story. Yeah. So.
Oh, I think that's it today. I hope everyone sees us in 2 weeks when we hit one of the 5 topics that we mentioned the other day. Please check out our website to find out what that topic is. Have a great day.
Great. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you for watching our podcast. Subscribe to our channel. Let us know what you think and what you would like us to talk about next. Don't forget to check out our website at prefectureesp.com.